Welcome to It's All Geek to Me, a podcast where two friends experience popular nerdy franchises for the first time. My name is Leah, and this season, my co-host Kelly will be watching my favorite films, The Lord of the Rings, for the very first time, and I'm the expert. Let's dive in.
And we're back, episode 8, which is the second part of the second movie.
And I would not be a true fan of The Lord of the Rings if I do not point out the very first moment that we see in this section. I have a fun fact about it.
Tell us.
It is one of the most well-known fun facts of any true Lord of the Rings fan. So normally Kelly starts us off. I'm going to start us off. We start the second section. We've just found out that Merry and Pippin may have died because the Horse Lords have slaughtered the orcs that they're with. So Legolas, Aragorn, and Gimli come up onto the hill where we have the pile of carcasses. And when Gimli finds the little wee belt in the pile of carcasses, Viggo Mortensen, who plays Aragorn, kicks a helmet and he breaks his toe in real life.
Ooh, that is a good fun fact.
And that is one of those moments that, like, when you're watching Lord of the Rings with someone for the first time, you just have to tell them. You're like, oh, do you know what happened in this moment? Viggo Mortensen broke his toe.
Wow, that is a good fact.
Yeah, and just in general, I get chills during that scene. Like, the whole sequence of it, flashing back and forth. I really love the way that that scene is done. But now that I've given my incredible fun fact, Kelly, pick us up.
It was incredible. I feel like this episode would have been incomplete without it, so I appreciate you sharing it. Although, I do have to say, I wish that you had texted me that as we were watching, because that would have been fun to know in the moment.
Well, I had to wait. I don't want to spoil our time together.
That's fair. So yeah, like Leah was saying, the remaining fellowship members ride over to the pile of dead orcs. There's this beheaded orc that's on a pike, which is really gross. They find the belt. Viggo Mortensen breaks his toe.
Yes.
And then Aragorn realizes that there's some hobbit tracks, and he realizes, he kind of walks us through what happens as we see flashbacks of what happens. So he sees that the hobbits got away, they broke their ropes, and they went into the Fangorn forest, which is apparently a very bad idea, because Gimli says what manner of craziness led them here or something like that.
Yes, it's very easy to get lost in the Fangorn forest.
So definitely a bad idea.
Yes.
And we see the hobbits running through the forest. One of the orcs actually followed, and he is giving chase. And
Nicolas Cage.
he does look startlingly like Nicolas Cage, I have to say. And Merry and Pippin decide that they're gonna climb up a tree to try to hide, because hobbits are very good at hiding. So the orc actually catches Merry as he's climbing up the tree and pulls him back down. And then Pippin is there looking down, and the tree is blinking, which was a very scary moment for a second. But then he starts to fall, the tree catches him, and then the tree steps on the orc, killing the orc that was about to kill Merry. And then he pulls up Merry, and he starts walking with them, and he keeps on calling them little orcs. And they're like, oh my gosh, this tree is alive. And he's like, I'm no tree, I'm an ent, which is apparently a shepherd of the forest. And his name is Treebeard. And he is kind of going on.
Easy name.
Yeah, that name I could pronounce. That was a good one for me. But he's going on about how nobody cares for the woods anymore. And he keeps on calling them little orcs. And at one point they correct him and they're like, we're not orcs, we're hobbits. And he's like, I've never heard of that. Sounds like some orc mischief. And then he gets a little mad at them. And then they're like, no, we're halflings. We're good people. And he's like, well, I guess the White Wizard will decide.
Yeah.
And then we see the silhouette of the White Wizard, and I wrote down, oh, expletive, he's going to take them to Saruman. At this point, that's what I thought was going on, which I know that the movie was trying to lead me to believe that, but we find out later that that is not the case. But we'll get into that. So back to Sam and Frodo on their journey to Mordor. They're at a swamp, which we later find out is called the Dead Marshes. And I am reminded again that they are barefoot. And it is very disgusting to not only be going through a marsh, but to be going through a marsh that is filled with the bodies of people who have died during a battle, which is very disgusting.
So a little info on the dead marshes. So you are seeing these dead bodies. It's remnants of a battle that happened there. I don't know exactly when the battle happened or what was going on, but the people that you're seeing in the water are actually visions. So the bodies are not physically there, but the spirits do exist in the water. And so when Frodo falls in,
Smiggle.
Spoiler alert. We see the spirits trying to like take him.
So like Leah was saying, Frodo sees a guy and the guy's eyes open, which makes more sense now knowing that he's kind of just a vision. And Frodo falls into the water. Sam sees it as it's happening, but then we see what's happening in the water with Frodo. There's these really creepy demon spirits coming for him. They're grabbing at him. It's very scary and also in slow motion and also underwater. Very unsettling effect. I absolutely loved it though. And then somebody pulls him out, which obviously at first you think it's one of the demons.
Yeah.
But it turns out that it's actually Gollum. And Frodo is really taken aback.
Yeah.
And Sam's kind of taking care of him. And Frodo keeps on looking over at Gollum. And I think he's just shocked that Gollum saved him.
I was shocked too. Yeah. Throughout this section that we just watched now, we start to see a kinship growing between Gollum and Frodo. There's some sort of connection that the two of them have. And I think Frodo wants to protect him.
In a scary kind of way, actually, which I'm about to talk about. Later, when they're camped out, Sam is sleeping and Frodo is petting the ring.
Oh,
and
yeah.
there's this very interesting parallel where we see Gollum petting an imaginary ring in his hand. And at this point, I was absolutely terrified because this is basically us seeing that this is Frodo's potential future. This is what his life could look like if he doesn't give up this ring. And in that moment, I was very scared for Frodo because Frodo, I think, can see that for himself as well. And he goes over to talk to Gollum and he starts trying to get a little bit more of his life story from him. And he says he was one of the river folk and that he knows that Gollum had a sad story.
Yeah.
And he says that his name used to be Smeagol, which I think is a Pokemon.
Smeargle.
Smeargle.
Smeargle. The painter Pokemon.
Yeah. I'm impressed that you know that.
Thank you. I am too. I fought a lot of them the last time I was playing Pokemon Emerald.
Yeah, you're doing a great job. Yeah, so then they start to talk a little bit. Gollum recognizes that his name was Smeargle.
Smeagol.
Oh, no, now I'm going to get confused. And then they hear screaming, like screeching sounds. Sam wakes up and there is a black rider. So Frodo kind of drops down in pain because something's going on. He sees the dead kings again and Sam kind of drags Frodo into a hiding spot.
Yeah, he's like re-experiencing when he got stabbed.
Yeah, that seems because he's kind of clutching his shoulder again too.
The assumption that I make is that the Black Rider that we see is the one that stabbed him.
That's interesting. Yeah, I didn't realize at first that it was just the one rider. And Sam says, you know, I thought they were killed, but Gollum says, no, they can't be killed. So it turns out that this rider is riding on a dragon, which is very cool, but also very evil.
I forget actually what the name of that. I don't think it's a dragon, but I cannot remember what that creature is called. So we'll just call it a dragon.
Some sort of fantasy creature that's
Yeah.
very dragon-esque. So Frodo has another O-face kind of moment where he starts just going a little crazy and Sam pulls him out of it. And he's like, Mr. Frodo, are you okay? And he's like, oh yeah, I'm fine. And then the dragon leaves mercifully, did not see or smell the hobbits, so they leave them alone.
So yeah, my thoughts on this scene, you know, in the moment where Frodo says Smeagol for the first time and he says, this was your name. The recognition from Gollum, I think, is super powerful because there is something really powerful in a name.
Did you cry?
I didn't, you know what? I haven't cried once. I got really close at one point, but I'm not in a crying mood today.
I actually wrote down a prediction of a point in this section where I thought you cried. I'm going to start doing that, where I'm going to make guesses as to where your crying is going to be.
I really don't think I'm going to cry during this movie, to be totally honest, but we might see.
Oh,
I don't
wow.
know. The third movie, I think there's more moments for me, but this one, I don't think that I will, but we'll see. We'll see. I'll tell you when it was like an almost cry moment.
Okay.
I didn't cry when he said his name, but his whole body has changed. His voice has changed. The way that people regard him has changed. The reason he gets the name Gollum, he's done it a few times, but he kind of, when he coughs the name Gollum. And that's how he was given the name because that's what his cough sounded like. It sounded like Gollum. People started calling him that. He's completely lost his identity. And one way to regain your identity is to take back your name. And this is the first time he's heard it in probably hundreds of years. And I think it's really significant that throughout this movie, throughout this section, Frodo continues to call him Smeagol. He's giving him his humanity back in a sense. And he's believing that he can come back from whatever sort of torment he's in right now.
Yeah, that's actually really interesting. And I didn't think about it, but also in terms of fantasy, there's definitely a lot of stories about how much power is in a name.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to hear about how hearing his name and kind of remembering that part of himself gives him a lot of power. Pretty cool.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, again, it just continues to build this connection and this kinship between Frodo and Gollum, or Smeagol, whatever we want to call him.
Which I'm not a huge fan of, if I'm being honest. I do not want to see Frodo becoming a new Gollum.
I know, but that's the thing is is Frodo becoming a new Gollum, or is he trying to save Gollum and bring him back? So which way are they going to go?
Fair,
it's going to be a
fair.
struggle, of course, because they have this ring.
Yeah, it seems like it could go either way.
And the whole petting the ring thing was very interesting.
Back to the remainder of the Fellowship. I don't know why I keep calling them that, because they're no longer on a quest for the ring.
No, I like that you're calling them that. Yeah, I think it works.
Cool. So the Fellowship is going through the forest, and Aragorn is seeing weird tracks. And Legolas has this moment where he says the forest is full of memories and of anger.
Yeah, I like how Legolas can feel the spirit of the place that he's in. He can feel the memories and the emotion that is around him. I think it's really cool.
Yeah, definitely an awesome power. And he also is aware that the trees are speaking. He tells Gimli to lower his axe because it's obviously got to be a little bit threatening.
Aragorn said that, but continue.
Oh, why do I keep on confusing the two of them? They look very different.
I don't know.
And then one of them, which at this point I don't trust my notes, said the White Wizard approaches. And Aragorn says, don't let him speak, he'll put a spell on us. So this wizard comes out, he's super shiny. At this point, I feel like there's a lot that you're gonna have to fill in because I am so confused. But let me just share what I wrote down first.
Kelly texted me during this section and she's like, wait, is that Gandalf? And we do not communicate when we watch this. That was the first time that Kelly has broken the vow of silence between us while we watched to be like, what the heck is going on?
I feel like this would be such a different podcast if we actually watched it side by side, because I would probably say all my thoughts while it's happening. So I'm actually glad that we're not watching it together.
Yeah.
I agree. This wizard comes out, and at first, is this the same actor?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's
I was
Ian
like,
McKellen.
who is this? Just another?
You're like, is it another old Dumbledore?
That's what I said. I was like, this is another Dumbledore lookalike? How many actors look like this? I literally wrote down another Dumbledore, and then they're like, it can't be. And then he tells this story about how he fought a dragon and fell. And I'm like, okay, so this isn't Gandalf because he died with the Balrog. So that must not be Gandalf. And then they call him Gandalf, and he's like, now I'm Gandalf the White. And then I texted Leah and I was like, who is this guy? So apparently it's still Gandalf.
So let me explain this whole section of kind of what happened. They brush over it, but it goes into more detail in the book. When we last saw Gandalf at the very beginning of this film, when we're seeing him fall into this cavern with the Balrog, and then they hit the ground, they actually hit water, which is how I think Gandalf was able to survive such a grisly fall. He's also an old dude. He's very powerful. So he does survive.
I don't know if being old is in his favor.
Well, but I mean, he's
being
thousands
powerful,
of years
for sure.
old. So he's got long life, you know? And then in this section, when he's explaining what happened with the Balrog, we see him on the top of a snowy mountain. What we have missed in between there, when they fell through water, he actually tracked the Balrog for days up to the top of the mountain, where he then was able to make contact with him, fight him, and kill him. But in this moment, he's so just out of energy that he himself dies on the top of this mountain. But because he is such a powerful creature, he's Gandalf the Grey, the second in the order of the wizards, where Saruman is the top of the order as the White Wizard. The god of the world, who we never see, we never really hear from, plucks him out of the universe and brings him back, giving him more power as Gandalf the White to come back and finish his task, which is to kill Sauron. The god of the world knows that it would be impossible for them to defeat Sauron without this powerful wizard on their side. He knows that they need him to kind of even the playing field. He brings him back as Gandalf the White. And that is what happened. Very confusing.
Wow. What would I have done if you weren't here to explain to me what's going on? I would have had no idea.
No, totally. And I even would say the first couple times that I saw these movies, and why I love these movies so much is because there is so much lore to look up and to learn about. The world is so vast and there's so much information. And I feel like every time I watch this film, I get more information or I see something different. And, when the first time I watched the films, I don't think I really understood what was happening, but I look these things up and I kind of learn, and then I can explain them to newbies like you.
Me me. Wow. Okay. So that definitely gives me a lot more insight. At this point, I was just operating like, okay, for some reason, Gandalf is back. I'm very glad I texted you because otherwise I would have been like, some other white guy is here. I don't know. I don't know what he's doing.
Yeah.
This next part absolutely cracked me up. So Gandalf does a little whistle and this horse comes over in slow motion. And this is a very special. I'm sorry. I'm laughing so hard because I wrote down that he's the Lord of the Horses.
Shadowfax.
And his name is Shadowfax, which is an incredible name.
Why is it so funny?
I don't know. It's just a silly thing. Like within Lord of the Rings, there's also the Lord of the Horses, who's a horse. And his name is Shadowfax, which I feel like doesn't really make sense because he's this like magnificent white horse. So a little confusing bit of a name, but Gandalf says that he's his friend, which I thought was very cute.
Cute,
and
I agree.
Then we cut back to Treebeard, whose name is very easy to pronounce, and the hobbits, and he says he's going to keep them safe, which is a very good thing because I was a little nervous about what was going to happen to them.
Yeah, basically what we don't see off camera is when Merry and Pippin see Gandalf, they realize it's Gandalf, whatever. They're obviously super excited. And Gandalf tells Treebeard to take them to the edge of the forest close to where they can go back to the Shire. So basically at this point, Merry and Pippin, their journey is over. They are heading home.
Oh.
And Treebeard is taking them partially home. Their part of the journey, as far as we know, has ended. And they're going home. Too big of an adventure for them.
And honestly, if I were a part of this journey, this would also be the point at which I would like to go home. And every point before that.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you're very sad about it because I know you loved those two hobbits, but at least they're alive,
I do love
which
them.
is good.
Yeah, they're both alive because they're besties. I'd be so sad if one of them died.
Yeah, I was really sad when I thought that one of them died. So I'm glad that they are still both alive and that they get to go back to the Shire, hopefully.
Yeah.
So then we cut back to Sam and Frodo, and they're at the Black Gate of Mordor, which is a very scary place.
Scary gate.
So the orcs are guarding it. There's this crazy big army. They blow some horns to let people into the gate, and we see how much power it takes to open this gate, which is a lot. So there's these giants that kind of have to push this turnstile. Definitely a lot of effort to get to it. And Gollum is freaking out, kind of just having his own little meltdown off to the side. And then Sam steps forward, I guess thinking that this is their opportunity, and he falls because the cliff kind of crumbles a little bit that they're on.
Yeah.
And he falls down. Frodo runs after him.
Frodo's one moment of bravery.
Yeah, I thought that was really impressive of him to do. But of course, he can't just let his friend tumble to his death. So a couple of the soldiers actually break away from their formation because they see something going on. Sam is actually trapped beneath some rocks. Frodo's trying to pull him out. They can't do it. So at the last second, Frodo is able to hide them. So thankfully, the soldiers don't see them and they go back to their unit. So they see the gate. It's still open as the soldiers are coming in, and Sam and Frodo think this is their opportunity to go run in after it. But Gollum stops them for some reason, and he's still having this crazy meltdown. And he's like, you can't take the ring to him. You can't take the ring to Sauron. He wants the ring. He's always wanted the ring. And he says there's another way in, like a secret dark way. There's stairs and a tunnel, and he's describing all of this stuff. And Sam is not having it. He's like, no, we got to go now. And then Frodo, for whatever reason, decides to believe Gollum, aka Smeagol, who I should probably call him Smeagol from now on.
Call him by his name.
Yeah. But Frodo says to Smeagol to lead the way. Do you have anything to say on that, or should I keep going?
Oh, there's something about the cloaks that I think is really interesting because, you know, when Frodo throws the cloak over Sam, it looks like a rock. It really hides them.
Yeah.
This is something I don't know. So I'm sort of asking our viewers if they know something about this, because then later in that same scene, when Sam and Frodo are about to make their charge for the gate, Sam says, I doubt even these elvish cloaks will hide us in there, which makes me think that the cloaks that they're wearing maybe have some sort of power to them of disguise. I don't know, but I'd never really picked up on that before. Of course, I'd noticed that the cloak looked like a rock, but I never picked up on what Sam says after it. So viewers, if you have any insight on that, send us a tweet at All Geek Podcast and let me know if those elvish cloaks have some sort of power to them. I would love to learn more about the Lord of the Rings.
That's really interesting. I kind of just assumed that this was more about their uncanny ability to kind
To
of stay
hide.
hidden. I didn't even pick up that there was potentially another bit of magic afoot.
Yeah, maybe. I wonder if there is. I'm curious about that. But again, I love this scene. I love the continued relationship growing between Frodo and Gollum. I like that he believes him and takes his advice.
Yes, continuing on, we're back to the Fellowship, the remaining Fellowship, which now has Gandalf the White in it, which is great.
I was actually a little concerned with the moment of Gandalf coming back because you did say when Gandalf died, you were like, I love it when they kill characters and it's very final. And I was like, yep, he's never going to come back. Yep, you're so right,
too.
Kelly. So I was a little worried that you were going to be mad.
I was thinking of that moment and I was going to gloss over it, but I was really excited in the first movie to see that Gandalf died because I love when there are very serious stakes in a movie. One thing that frustrates me in movies and books is when every character that dies keeps on coming back. But I was going to let it slide because I'm still curious to see where this journey takes us.
And what Gandalf's purpose is in this story moving forward.
And also, it seems like he still has died. He's come back a little different now. So I'll give them a pass.
Right, exactly.
So anyway, so we see King Theoden, and he's still this super old, decrepit guy. And Éowyn, the niece, tells him that his son is dead. And the king barely acknowledges this. So Éowyn is crying over the son's dead body, and this evil advisor shows up, whose name is...
Grima Wormtongue.
Wormtongue. Oh my gosh, that's a very evil name. And he says, like, he must have died in the night. And I immediately suspect that Grima for sure killed the son because he is just being a little weird.
I kind of think he did too. I think they go more into it in the book. I truly don't remember, but I also have that same sense that Grima had something to do with it.
Oh yeah, absolutely, because he's being very sketchy. And then he starts acting super creepy to Éowyn, and he's kind of just insulting her.
Yeah.
And at first, it seems like she is a little responsive to it, and she's like about to give in to him, and then she says, "Your words are poison," and she leaves, and she actually sees the Fellowship.
Something about this section, which I think ties into the books a little bit more. The next section that we're about to see with Gandalf coming in and, saving the king, it's done very differently in the books. And I think that this scene also ties into that, where in the books, Saruman is not actually possessing Theoden. Grima is feeding Theoden lies, and I believe he's also physically poisoning him, which is why he's in this state. The conversation that Grima is having with Éowyn in this section, in my mind, is him also trying to turn Éowyn to the darkness. Because he says something like, the darkness is calling you, or he says something like that. So my thought on it is that he's trying to work the whole family and get the whole family turned over to darkness, and she's his next target because he's also in his own way in love with her, and he wants her to reciprocate this.
Very gross. I hate this guy.
But she doesn't. But yeah, she runs out. She sees the Fellowship coming. I love the flag ripping off, this nation crumbling a little bit under Saruman's thumb.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was thinking the exact same thing. So the Fellowship approaches. They want to go see the king, and they're asked to take all of their weapons, and the man who comes to take their weapons, I don't think I wrote down his name.
I think his name is Hama.
But he tries to take Gandalf's staff. And Gandalf is like, "Oh, you're going to take my walking stick? I'm an old guy." And the guy lets him in, which I thought was a great moment that he was kind of just using that to his advantage.
Part of me thinks Hama knew. I mean, yeah, I think Hama knew that that was a magical staff, but I don't think Hama wants to continue with this nation the way that it's going, and he wants Gandalf to come and intervene. So he pretends like he agrees with him.
Well, awesome. Okay, that makes me like him a little bit better. So they're calling him Gandalf the Grey, and he's actually wearing a gray cloak.
Yeah.
So at this point, he's definitely hiding that he is now a white wizard. And the advisor is not thrilled about Gandalf visiting. He's whispering poison into the king's ear. He's being very creepy and bad. There's very ominous vibes. They kind of lock the door behind the group as they come in. And Gandalf just starts ripping on the advisor, which I thought was super funny. I don't remember the insults that he said specifically, but they were great. I was just cackling the whole time.
He said one thing. He said, keep your forked tongue behind its teeth or something, which I liked.
And then he said something about calling him a worm, which I guess was based on his last name being a little wormy. So I thought that was a great moment too. So then everyone starts kind of attacking the Fellowship and they're fighting back. And then Gandalf comes up to the king and he's like, I free you from this spell.
And yeah, this is the moment where I really felt like Hama knew that the staff was powerful because when everybody goes to attack, the man next to Hama, I'm just going to call him Hama because I'm almost positive that's his name, goes to take his sword out and he puts his hand on him and he says, like, stop, like, don't, like, just let this play out. Let's not get involved.
Ooh,
so I think he was kind of, not that he was in on it, but I think he had sort of an idea of what was going to happen and that it would be better for Rohan if they just let Gandalf do his thing.
Okay, so then the king responds and he's like, you have no power here. And then Gandalf pulls off his gray cloak and everybody sees that he is now a white wizard. And he says he'll pull out Saruman like poison from a wound. So we see that this king is definitely possessed and they kind of start going at it and Gandalf smacks him in the head with his staff and we actually see a visual of Saruman being knocked out of him and kind of back into whatever castle he is from.
He's back in Isengard on the one tower, yeah.
Ooh, one of the towers.
And so in the book, how this sequence goes down, again, a little bit different because Saruman, as I said before, was not possessing him. What actually happens is Gandalf shows Theoden visions of the truth, of what's really going on, and he kind of snaps out of this like poison that Grima has been giving him. So it's like same, but different.
Just a little visual way of showing that. But yeah, so then we see the king now free of this poison that is Saruman, and he is considerably younger now, which I breathed a sigh of relief because I was having a hard time keeping track of all of these old white bearded men. They are all very similar.
I didn't like looking at him. He looked so nasty to me.
Yeah, he was looking a little creepy and he was also looking like he was on death's door. And I thought that was interesting that when he was kind of poisoned, so to speak, by Saruman, he had taken on this very creepy, old, decrepit persona.
Yeah.
How did nobody know that he was possessed? Because he looks incredibly different. Or did they know and they just couldn't do anything about it?
What a question. I don't know. I feel like they kind of knew, but they had no power to do anything. Saruman is the white wizard. He's so powerful. And look what happened. You know, Éomer stood against it and Éomer got banished. And Éowyn didn't even know that he got banished. According to Grima told Éowyn that Éomer left them, that he left. So he lied.
Yeah. Ooh, I picked up on that too, but I wasn't sure.
Yeah, no, that's a thing.
So yeah, so he's kind of now realizing that he was under this spell for a long time and Gandalf says that it's time to fight, basically. He just says, I think your old hands will remember
their strength better when they're gripping the sword, yeah.
Very cool moment. And then he throws out the advisor and he is about to make the killing blow. And then Aragorn stops him, which I was so angry about because this always bites the hero in the butt when they let the bad guy go because you know that bad guy is just going to go running back to the even better guy. So we already know that this is a terrible idea. Yeah.
And not only that, Aragorn has some like balls right there. He is just some ranger as far as anybody knows. And he just grabbed the king and told the king not to kill someone. Like that's going to, I think, cause some tension between those two, you know?
Definitely a problem. Definitely super annoying that he did that. He's got that hero complex where he doesn't want to kill anybody.
Absolutely.
And then the advisor gets on a horse and he rides away. So we know we're going to see him again. I hate this guy. I can't wait for him to die. And then the king asks for his son and realizes that he's dead. So we're brought to his tomb. And at first he didn't seem too sad to me, but I realize now that he was kind of just having his moment.
Yeah.
And Gandalf is comforting him. I wrote down Leah's probably crying at this point.
I get emotional. Oh, I didn't mention the point where I almost cried, which was when we saw Gandalf's face for the first time.
Oh, really? could have sworn it would be this moment.
I got emotional here as well when he says, like, no parent should have to bury their child. It was very sad. I was very close.
Yeah. Oof, that's a rough one.
Yeah, it was tough.
Yeah, I was not even close, but I felt the emotional tug at that part.
Yeah.
Because that is definitely sad. You know, regardless of the story, you know, fantasy or otherwise, I think that is something that is very heart-wrenching. And he also mentions that, I don't think he said cursed, but it's his fate that he has to stay alive and watch his kingdom fall, which I thought was really interesting and also really sad.
Yeah, he said something too about how the young die and the old linger on, and just, you know, they're watching the world crumble. These like old people are just watching the world crumble and they can't really do anything about it as the young are perishing before them.
And that is where we stopped, and I fully expected to call Leah and hear her sniffling, but I guess she's a little heartless.
No, I was fine.
Just kidding.
Listen, I'm a little hungover today, so the
Oh
tears
my
aren't
gosh.
coming.
That's why the cry meter is off today. She's too dehydrated.
Yeah, it's because I don't have any liquid left in me. There was one little last moment. Did you watch it? Like where Gandalf kind of looks over the hill and we see the boy and the girl.
I saw that, and that's when I stopped because I wasn't sure if I was supposed to get to that point
Yeah,
yet.
just so it was the boy and the girl from earlier. Freda and her brother, whose name I don't remember, have come from the town that had been destroyed by the wild men. They finally made it to the king to like tell them what's going on. And that's where we've left off
Right.
is these kids showed up. They made it. The kid fell off the horse, but they made it.
So the kids live on.
Yeah.
We'll find out what happens to them next week, I guess.
Next week on Thursday, we will find out. Thanks again for joining us. Fun episode.
Yes.
Big episode.
Yeah, this was a long episode. So thanks for sticking with us.
Yeah, this was a long section.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll see you next time.
You've been listening to the It's All Geek to Me podcast, hosted by Leah and Kelly. Make sure to hit subscribe on your favorite podcast player and give us a rating. You can also find us on Twitter at All Geek Podcast. New episodes drop every Thursday. See you next week.